I just don't have the motivation working for someone else. I can't find the drive to do it and to do it well. And if I don't do it well, I prefer not to do it. When you have an idea and when you start building, you slowly, or sometimes quickly, fall in love with what you are building instead of falling in love with the problem. You're moving away from the truth, which is the only important thing that you need to chase as a founder. And this is the most dangerous thing that can happen.
Gilad Uziely. He left Jerusalem with a suitcase full of ideas, built a travel startup in Italy, ran the innovation lab for one of the world's fastest growing tech hubs, and then he went broke, burned through years of savings, all to chase one problem. Why do solo entrepreneurs struggle to control their own money? That obsession led to Sequence, a financial operating system for creators, freelancers, and anyone with more than one bank account. It sounds simple, but what they're building, it could rewrite the rules of money management, and what he shares in this episode might just change how you manage your money forever.
If you're focused on the right metrics, opinions doesn't play part anymore. You need to know what you are tracking, you need to know how success looks like. You don't have to nail it from day zero. Sometimes it takes time. I have all my life tried to build communities, and my take is that community product fit is much harder than product market fit. And if you have a community and you see like early signs of community being created, you have to do whatever you can in order to cultivate it. And that's what we've done very successfully. The most important resource that we have obviously is our time. You have a limited time here. Make sure that you're putting your efforts and your energy in a place that makes sense.
Gilad, I'm very excited to chat. This is going to be a really honest and brutal startup story, and I just want to frame it for the listeners. So we're going to be mostly speaking about Sequence today, but your last company, Lance, so you raised 8 million, you grew to 30,000 users, you realized you were essentially lighting money on fire with every customer due to fraud, and instead of sugarcoating it, you spoke to your investors, and there's a story there, a really important story for entrepreneurs. So explain to me the good and the bad of entrepreneurship, because I think we speak about the good too often, but you've experienced some not so great experiences.
Yeah, I mean, everybody celebrates, the huge successes, the massive exits, the IPOs, and somebody just watching from the sidelines, it seems like everything is smooth. But the truth is that it's a mess. For all people that I know, and I assume most entrepreneurs, there's a lot of pain involved in the or along the journey. Sometimes as founders, we sometimes find ourselves very lonely. And shit hits the fan, and when the shit hits the fan, you are left many times alone and just trying to figure stuff out. You have employees, you have partners and co-founders, you have investors, you have clients, people that are actually using something that maybe you've built. So it's a very hard place to be.
I think that we over glorify entrepreneurship and we make it seem like it's all fun and all good and it's hard work, but I don't think we really dive into what happens if it goes wrong. And also, to your point, it's very lonely. So if it does go wrong, which everybody who I know who's built something significant, there's been a point where it's gone very wrong. How do you deal with it? Because a lot of people don't understand what you're going through. So let's even back up, because I want to understand why you chose to be an entrepreneur. What kind of delusion made you want to go build something? Because that's also interesting. And I don't believe that 99% of people on this planet should be entrepreneurs, because it does take a certain way of thinking and it takes somebody who maybe is a little bit delusional. But back me way up. Was Lance your first company ever?
No. I'm almost 45 now, and I had like a W-2 for maybe 2 years of my life. I've always built stuff, and not necessarily startups. I've started actually my first steps as an entrepreneur, as an adult. We've built a tour operator, we've dealt with tourism, we've done a few cool stuff there. But to be honest, I don't have the motivation working for someone else. I can't find the drive to do it and to do it well. And if I don't do it well, I prefer not to do it.
So this startup story with Lance. So why was this story? So Lance wasn't your first company. It wasn't your last. Excuse me. I mean, like, now you're building Sequence, but with Lance, what was the thing that went wrong? I think this is like a great lesson for people.
Well, a few things went wrong, but I think that the core problem with Lance was the fact that we've made a few core assumptions that were just wrong. So the basis of the business were not built for success. And in our specific case, what we've done, we've tried to build a finance company or a financial company using embedded finance tools. And what happens is when I say embedded finance tools, so banking is a service, right? So you're not actually the bank, but you're acting as a bank. So if you were like if you started really early or have a lot of resources, so companies like Chime, right? They did obviously very well. But for somebody who came in the second, third, or even fourth round of neobanking, the unit economics just never added up because you can't operate like a bank, you can't lend against your balance sheet, and you can't really make money like banks. And on the other side, you get all the downside of fraud, chargebacks, disputes, and by far the biggest problem for us was fraud, right? So at a certain point in time, we've just looked at the numbers and we've understood that with every customer that you bring on, you're basically shortening the life of your company. Because what happened is that you would get like a cohort, like a past cohort, and you thought that your customer acquisition cost was like $100 or whatever. And then as time goes by, you start to understand that 20, 30, 40% of those customers are accounts that you actually have to close. So the CAC is not 100 anymore. It can, it goes up. And sometimes for certain costs, it even doubled itself. So you're sitting here, CAC is going up, the payback period or the TROI keeps getting like longer and longer. And you basically understand that the trajectory that you're driving to off a cliff, basically.
So this is something that makes sense to me, but for somebody who's first starting out, this is a little bit scary because I think the lesson here is that it doesn't matter how many times you do this. It's not like the next time is guaranteed success. And I think that sometimes investors even think that. We can talk about that as well. That's sort of the other side of entrepreneurship. They always bet on people that have had past successes or serial entrepreneurs as opposed to the first time entrepreneur because they think, well, if they've done it before, then they can do it again. But explain to me, how does a serial entrepreneur who's done this many times, how do you get some of these core business assumptions wrong? Like, what was the blinder that stopped you from seeing this when you started, Lance?
Well, I think that when you have an idea and you start building, you slowly, or sometimes quickly, fall in love with what you are building instead of falling in love with the problem. Right? You've built something, you start telling yourself stories. You start basically lying to yourself. Right? You say, if only we've built this, and this is the only thing that is missing, and something, maybe one parameter looks really good because we grew fast. We've opened a lot of accounts, like we are like tens of thousands of accounts, so you say, this is working, and then you start to ignore the bad stuff, and you start lying to yourself. It's like your baby, right? And everybody thinks that his baby is like the most beautiful and perfect thing in the world, but there are babies that are not perfect, right? And, yeah, and then you start lying to yourself. You're moving away from the truth, which is the only important thing that you need to chase as a founder. And it's something very natural, right? It's like it's a defense mechanism that we all have. And this is the most dangerous thing that can happen. It can happen to anyone.
We'll talk about how you navigated because this is something that you have to deal with. You raise investors, but how do you remove yourself and remove your emotion and ego and attachment to the company so that you can make objectively good decisions? And it's what's difficult about Lance is because you had like unit economics and economic issues and fraud, it's not about like a pivot sometimes. I think it's the Kevin O'Leary line, right, where you have to take it out behind the barn and shoot it. And I think that that's a very difficult thing for entrepreneurs to do, especially when they've raised money. So how did you in Lance sort of say, okay, this is really not working. I need to find a way to have really hard conversations and kill this business. What was the thing that woke you up?
Just the numbers. Just the numbers. If you're focused on the right metrics, opinions doesn't play part anymore. Right? You need to know what you are tracking. You need to know what you are measuring. You need to know how success looks like. Sometimes it will take a little bit longer, and sometimes you just need to see that you don't have to nail it from day zero, right? Sometimes it takes time. Usually it takes time, but you need to see that you are tracking towards what the important things. And with Lens, the problem that we should have killed it a year before we have. That's the truth.
Was there, I mean, just curious, I mean, like hindsight's 2020, but technically, do you think that if you had found a way to mitigate the fraud, and explain to me like what fraud is in like the banking sense for people that are listening, like what like, fraud is not like somebody on your team committing fraud. Fraud is like the customers are committing fraud. But was there, if you had found a way to mitigate that, would it have been a successful business model, or is that just a hypothetical? There's no point in even figuring that piece out.
So that's first of all, figuring that out would have been huge and could have created a huge company that has nothing to do with the neobank, because fraud is a problem across the board. So to your first question, the fraud came from customers, not from employees at all, and it was anything that you can imagine, anything from money laundering to people, topping up their account with 20K, going to Vegas for a crazy weekend and calling on Monday saying that their car was stolen, my wallet was stolen, it wasn't me. So even if you can prove that it was them, you still have to pay like heavy fees to Visa and the other providers. People that are just using your platform to get like referral fees and stuff like that, which is not actually fraud, but that's not why you've built the product, and they're just like shitty customers, right? You can't make money off those kind of customers. So it was across the board. We were called to the sheriff office in New York, and like anything from like crazy money laundering chains to just like people trying to steal 5K or something.
Okay, so it's not working. You raised money for this company. So did you raise 8 million, or how much did you raise for this?
Just under 8 million, yeah.
You raised 8 million. Okay, so then what happens when you realize that the company's not working?
So to be honest, it's very stressful. Like I remember me and my co-founders going into a room and saying like, we don't know how to save this. We have obviously fiduciary responsibility to our investors, and we understood that with every new client, we are basically, like, we had to stop. It wasn't responsible on our side to continue, and we said, okay, first let's stop bringing on new customers. We still had thousands of people using the product, so it's like it's a banking app. You can't just close it one day, right? So we continued supporting them. We offboarded them and sold the customers that were that other companies were interested in. Went back and then we said, okay, what are we doing now? Like, we either give money back to our investors or we think of a pivot. At this point, I'm still not talking to my investors. It was like it was a few days later.
You're just having a conversation with your co-founder, thinking like, what the hell are we doing?
Yes. We understood that we had to stop. So to stop onboarding new customers, and we did that. And then we went into a room and said, okay, what can we do here? We either close or we pivot. And we decided to try and pivot to save the company. That was that's what we wanted to do. When we started, throwing ideas around, but then after like a few days, we said, okay, guys, we've just proved that our ideas are not that great. It was just proven. So we said, instead of thinking about ideas, let's think about core principles that will guide our pivot. And it came down to two things, really. One, we were all over 40, and we want to make sure that we are investing the next 10, 15, even 20 years of our life in something meaningful, with chances of succeeding. And for that, we wanted to get to conviction. So the first important thing was get to high conviction. That was the first thing. And the second thing was that after trying to build a bank, and competing with Bank of America, Chase, all those like huge players, we said no more red oceans. We are looking for a place, for a blue ocean, low competition. Because that's very, very important, and that's when we started working with a framework that I actually really like, because it's very simple, and it's like you need to look for stuff that are non-consensus and right. And basically it's very simple, like consensus, non-consensus, right and wrong. If you are wrong, you are wrong. Nothing you can do about it. If you are right and consensus, that's Lens, right? Everyone that I talked to told me, yes, of course, freelancers and the self-employed needs a better banking experience. But there you meet the banks of America, right? They also have a bank, right? Um, and when you find something that is non-consensus, right? That's when you have like a vision into the future, right? That's where you can build something that is truly unique. And it's very hard because then when you go to talk to people, many will tell you, dude, I don't understand what you're even talking about. Why would anyone use it? It's you are stupid, basically.
Explain to me, because you spoke about sort of first principles thinking, but you also spoke about non-consensus but correct. So how can you figure out which first principles apply to a non-consensus but correct idea? Because this is what you've really done with Sequence.
So we've used that framework to hit what was important for us, and that's a blue ocean.
Understood.
That's how we looked at it, and then to find the non-consensus and right idea. My best suggestion is be lucky. that's that's the most important thing.
If you think about the most important narrative or principle that you had to change when you started Lance, I mean, there's probably many, but what was the main one that allowed Sequence to be successful when Lance wasn't? And you've danced around it with again, non-consensus, but still correct. But there was one main idea that you would have had to have changed.
I think that a few things. I think that first and maybe the most important one is that we've really shifted from talking to our customers or our potential customers to listening to them. And there's a huge difference there, right? So before actually starting Lance, if we were not just talking to customers but also listening to them, we maybe have built Sequence, I don't know, 4 years ago. Because before Lance, we've built a bunch of like just tools for freelancers and self-employed to just see all their money and their tax status and everything. And they told us, wow, this is great. I love this dashboard. And that was like a kind of like a Mint experience or Monarch Money experience. And they said, I really like it. I want to touch the screen and move money around. And then if we were smart back then, or we were just actually like digging in and understanding what those people want, maybe we would have built Sequence then and not Lance. But then we said, okay, they want to move the money. We need to be a bank. And there's a very famous saying by Bill Gates who said, the world doesn't need more banks, it needs better banking. So listen to Bill Gates. That's another tip. He knows what he's talking about.
So dealing with investors is not easy. I know that you had how many investors total? Because you raised 8 million, but it wasn't from just a small group. There was 83 total investors.
Yeah, we had to collect 83 signatures from anyone employees, accelerators and programs we went through. And then everyone who ever wrote a check into Sequence, and we've raised a bunch of money from friends and family, so small checks. Those guys were never the problem.
So it sounds like it kind of sounds like, to be honest, like startup hell, like going through, because this is, so now, okay, so just to frame it for people, if Lance isn't working, you have hard conversation with your co-founder. Okay, we got to go in a different direction. You got to get 83 signatures. It took you 8 months to get 83 signatures. I know that there was some people that were problems, or at least they gave you a hard time. So during that time, I mean, you're stressed out. I don't think that you're really, you're not making a ton of money yourself personally, and life still goes on as well. So you have to figure out what you're going to do in terms of like, I don't know your whole financial situation, but when this is happening, you're not drawing massive salaries while you're telling your investors that there's a chance that they've lost their money and you have to renegotiate exactly what you're going to build. So talk to me about this restructure, because dealing with investors, I even sometimes recommend that if founders, there's reasons for raising money and there's reasons for not raising money. Obviously, if you want to grow fast, you can raise equity. You can also raise debt. It doesn't have to be equity. There's different ways to raise money. But what you went through is probably one of the most difficult things that somebody would ever have to go through if they are raising money, outside of literally just telling your investors, I'm sorry, we've lit your money on fire. You're not getting it back. So you have this. So tell the story. You've had this conversation with your co-founder. What's the next step?
We went into it. If I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know how painful it's going to be. And what we did was we were in the room and said, okay, let's save the company. Like we still think that we have something that we can do. Let's try. And with the two like core principles of pivoting, we went and started talking to Lance's good users. And we asked them, guys, what are you doing here? And it was very, like, I don't want to say unanimous, but it was very common for them to tell us, I really love this mini Zapier experience for my money. I wish I could connect my, and then everybody, like my husband account, my wife account, my business partner, my 401k, my student loan, my credit cards, my mortgage. So they wanted like a bunch of stuff. And then Oren, my co-founder and the CTO, came back and said like, I think that what these guys are actually looking for is actually a router for their money. They need a better way to route their money between all those different accounts. And then we said, okay, that's interesting, but again, we just took a massive beating. So we wanted to optimize for conviction. So then we went and started talking to people who never heard about Lance, not necessarily freelancers, anyone who was willing to talk to us. And we came to them and said, hey, we're going to build this router for money. It's like Zapier for money. And then out of every 10 people that we talked to, 6, 7 would go like, you guys are idiots. I don't understand what you're even talking about. And 3, 4 would go, where have you been all my life? Look at what I've built. Check out my Excel sheet. You know, so it was, this is non-consensus. Right or wrong, we don't know yet, but it was definitely non-consensus and very confusing, right? You don't know what to think. And then we said, okay, optimizing for conviction. Let's be brave. Let's build a landing page and let's charge a relatively high amount just for the concept. And we've built a bunch of landing pages. We've built actually one landing page and a bunch of ads and just describing the product. We call it Money Route or Route Money, which is like a shitty name. And we told people, if you want to get a lifetime access for this product, pay $200 today. And I told my co-founders, you guys are crazy. Nobody is going to give you that amount of money. But we launched it. And I was extremely happy to be wrong, because in 5 days, 100 people paid the $200 for the lifetime access. For we didn't have the product, obviously, and started talking about it all over the internet. So they opened the Discord server for us. They started talking about it on Reddit, and people came knocking on the door. And then we already said, okay, like the $200 is off the table. This offer is off the table. But if I still remember exactly the wording, we told them, if you want, you can lock in a discounted subscription for life. And we actually had people paying subscription for a product that not only wasn't ready, we haven't even started building. And that's conviction, right? And then with that, we've started creating like a waiting list. So we had like a very, very initial traction, and we've actually like already got like, I don't know, around 20K or even more before even writing one line of code. And this is very rare. Many people can say that that's what they want to do, but they actually do it. It's much harder. It's like a lean startup 101, but it's much easier said than done. And at this stage, I went back to Lance's investors. We had like around, I think, $2 million in the bank, and I told them, there's something here. Let's give us some more money. At this stage, we've done one priced round and 2 safes, one on top of the other, which is also a huge mistake. We can talk about it if you want. And it was like 2022 when nobody was doing anything. It was just after COVID. It was the really shittiest market. All my investors told me we are not investing. So I went and started pitching to everyone who was willing to talk to me. Anyone, from VCs to angels to anyone. I've pitched, I counted, I think it's around 160 investors, which is crazy. It's not a smart thing to do, but I was like, I had nothing else to do. Most of them told me no. Some of them took the time to explain to me why what I'm building doesn't make sense. A few looked at it seriously, but then saw the cap table and were like, I'm not touching this. It's too much. And I got 2 term sheets. And when you're building something that is non-consensus right, or non-consensus at least, it's hard to find investors, because all of them, like most investors, we are investing in the outliers, we are looking for something different, but actually very few do that. And I was lucky to get term sheets from Aleph, which is one of the top Israeli VCs, and Emerge, which is another awesome, great VC. And they eventually, Aleph led the round and Emerge participated, and they did the round. But before the round happened, there was 7 to 8 months of restructuring, because the term sheet, which was, at the end a good thing, but again, I had no idea what I was walking into. They required us to collect 95% of the signatures in order to start a new company, to buy assets from the old company for equity in the new company.
NetSuite is a success story partner. Now, what does the future hold for business? If you ask 9 experts, you're going to get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market, rates are rising, rates are falling. Honestly, sometimes you just need a crystal ball. But until we get one, over 42,000 businesses have future-proofed themselves with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 AI cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth giving you the visibility and control that you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future of your business with actionable data. And when you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. Look, if I needed this kind of business management system, NetSuite is exactly what I'd use. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest business opportunities. And speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning. The guide is free to you. That's netsuite.com/Scott Clary. Indeed is a success story partner. Now, say you just realized your business needed to hire someone fast. How can you find amazing candidates fast? It's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. And with Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed Sponsored Jobs, there's no monthly subscription, no long-term contracts. You only pay for results. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Just go to Indeed.com/Clary right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Clary. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. What would be the advice that you'd tell a founder who's going through something similar right now? Like, how did you? Okay, so this is obviously on the very opposite end of the spectrum, but like I know founders that go through really bad business situations, and some, like, I mean, there's been stories of founders like committing suicide and like just very, very depressed, or getting sick or destroying their relationships, or like a variety of different things because of business stress. So what's the advice on how to navigate something like this and keep your head and keep your relationships and keep your health?
So now I'm gonna, do as I say, not as I do, because I did a pretty lousy job in managing my own mental health at that point. And I think that if I had someone that I could talk to, either a professional, or maybe sometimes the people who understand you the most are founders that are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you in the journey. So I have this net. Now I'm even building it even further and deeper. But my personal feeling, I'm not sure how real it was, right? But that was my feeling. I felt alone. And I have an amazing wife and a lot of friends, and I have great team and co-founders. But I think that I put myself in a situation in which I could have done a better job. I didn't take care of myself, and I'm still paying the price, even though it finished 18 months ago. And by the way, if somebody is going through this kind of pay to play restructuring, I'm happy to talk. I always have time to talk to people who are going through that. This is the kind of difficulty that I felt, so I'm happy to share my experience. So if somebody people can feel free to we can leave my email, and people can
I
reach
would
out.
appreciate, because I think that these are so tough conversations. It's so cliche, but it's very true. Like, everything you want is on the other side of a tough conversation, and these are all pretty standard motivational ideas. And if you listen to enough podcasts or read enough books, you're going to hear these. But when you're actually going through it, it doesn't matter what you know or what you've read or what you've heard or even what you've been advised to do by your friend or your peer or your mentor. it's just very difficult. Like sometimes it's just, and you have to build the courage to have difficult conversations. Now you were somewhat forced to, but I think that, even to your point, you probably could have had these conversations earlier, and it probably would have made things a little bit easier. Like you probably could have had a tough conversation with your co-founder, and I'm just making assumptions, but you probably could have had a tough conversation with your co-founder, which would have led to tough conversations with your investors even earlier, which would have ironically made it a little bit easier. But the longer you draw it out, the more difficult it's going to get.
Yeah, I think this is a good advice for almost anything. Don't sit on things. For me, the conversation with my co-founders wasn't tough. The situation was tough for all of us. And I mean, our first reaction was like, let's save the company. So the Lance's investors were like not willing to continue to do their role in venture building, which is to invest. So that led to a lot of friction and a lot of pain for everybody. Right? I also understand how they felt.
Going through this experience, what would be the advice that you give when it comes to how to raise money that maybe you would have done differently, knowing that, say, this is a potential, not ideal, but potential outcome?
So this is again a place where like it's much easier said than done, and people tell you find the right investor for you. It's like finding like a wife or husband or whatever. Like you need to see the world in the same way. But when things aren't amazing, and you still believe in what you're doing, and you're like and you have like this conviction, you'll take money from whoever is willing to give it to you. And I think that going back, we've raised money from all kinds of people. Some of them turn out to be amazing, like the best, and some turn out to be not that amazing. But if you take me back, if I wouldn't take that money, I wouldn't be able to find the opportunity and to learn about the amazing opportunity that we now have with Sequence. So if you can, take the best investors, but sometimes you can't, it's like so my real advice here is to talk to people who raised money from those people and the companies didn't succeed, and then maybe you will be able to learn. Would you take a different decision? To be honest, I don't know, because you said, okay, I just need this 500K and then I can start building, move forward. So it's really easy to say and very hard to do.
I was more curious to take it a step deeper, even more technically, because you mentioned you raised two safes. Why was that a bad idea? Like from a raising perspective?
Because when you have to do a down round, or when you have to do, or when there's like a pay to play, or when you have to do restructuring, then the people with the safes have much better terms than all other investors. That's create inequality between the investors and also towards the founders, because basically with the safe or with the convertible note, you owe them, right? They are like debtors of the company. So I'm not saying don't do safes at all, but try to avoid them as much as you can, especially if you've already done one price round, because then you're basically putting the new investors in a much better conditions, or a much more favorable down round in position when the down round comes, and you really need a great, experienced, patient and smart lawyer
Yeah, of course.
that have been through a couple of those. Don't use your friend's cousin or your neighbor's daughter. Or, find somebody who's done that, and be ready to pay. But it's worth it, because without our lawyer, I don't think that we could have done that.
Those people that were making your life miserable because they didn't want to accept the new terms, what was the final strategy? You mentioned you're not a good negotiator, but you got the deal done. So what eventually moved them over the finish line?
I think that they got to a point in which they understood that this is the best outcome. There is no better outcome here. They almost killed the deal. They made the lead investor very anxious and nervous, and even I talked about it before in the previous podcast, but he pulled the term sheet. I woke up one day, and the investor, who's like super smart and an amazing investor, I wake up, I see like, I'm sorry, but I see that your current investors are not thinking of the best interest of the company, and I'm pulling the term sheet. And I was like, that's it, we're fucked. There's no no investor, nobody's doing anything. But he actually did it because he wanted to help me. Unfortunately, he didn't tell me.
Oh, I understand. So he was saying that if he pulls a term sheet, then that means that those investors are shit out of luck. They have nothing going forward, and they're going to lose their money. But he didn't tell you this, but he knew in his head this was like a psychological negotiating strategy.
He said I'm pulling the term sheet. The term sheet is pulled. And then obviously I I just remember like waking up in the morning, seeing this email, and like, fuck, what I'm gonna tell my co-founders. That was the first thing that I was like, but then we went back to I just took a screenshot, sent to the investors, and told them, I think that I can still save this, but you have to play along, or else we are all getting zero.
That's smart. It's smart on his part. It's smart.
He almost killed me. He almost killed me in the process, but it was smart.
So things move forward. You have this non-consensus but correct idea with sequence. So talk to me about, just frame the problem, but how did you validate? How did you get what was the word? Like radical conviction that sequence was a correct non-consensus problem that actually could turn into a business?
I mean, we try to come to this and it's something that is sometimes very hard for men to do, but we try to come as humble as possible. We came with like one of the important things that we told ourselves: we know nothing. Let's see how people are actually reacting to what we are building. So it started with the landing page and the ads, and ended up with the 100 or 100 and a few more that paid. Only once we got to that point, we started building, because we've had a lot of experience with Lens. We started building fairly quickly. We knew exactly what we were doing in terms of the infrastructure and everything. Very quickly, we've launched. You can't really call it an MVP because in fintech, when you move money around, you can't have something not working, and you also need to get approval from the bank. So you have to have the FDIC in place, so everybody needs to give you like the stamp. So you can't call it an MVP, but it was our first product to the market, and it was closed just for the people who paid $200, and that was like maybe Q3, Q4 of 2023, when we launched the very first version. Then we said, okay, we know nothing, so once we felt ready that the product was stable enough, we said, let's open to anyone who was willing to pay. And then we moved from optimizing to conviction to optimizing to learning. And also optimizing for learning means that you need to increase friction. So we said, no free tier, no free trial, no free nothing. You want to use sequence, you pay. And it's still the case today. Taking a few steps back, in Lens, when we asked people to pay for what we were doing, nobody was willing to pay. We said, okay, let's give it for free. And that's because it's like a bank, nobody is willing to pay for banks, so let's give it for free, which is always the wrong thing to do, because basically what they told us is, we don't see value in what you've built, so we are not willing to pay. So we've learned a lesson, and for sequence we said, you have to pay. And we opened as wide as we could. We got anyone from pure W2s all the way to like small but like medium-sized businesses, and anything in between: startups, micro businesses, freelancers, gig workers, side hustlers, and anyone that was willing to pay. We've spent Q1 and Q2 just getting people onboarded, and once we've hit like around 500 or 600 paying customers, which was exactly mid 2024, we started looking at the data, and it was very, very clear that the by far best users are small business owners. And when I say small, I mean like 1 to 10 employees. We still didn't really understand why, but we saw the data, and then we shifted our marketing and really zoomed in on those people, and then we went from like $200,000 in ARR to we've 7x'd it in like 8 or 9 months.
In the market, Mint, is that the main competitor, or I guess like sort of like a comparable? Because Mint, they have millions of users, but they've never figured out how to really make money move automatically, and that's what Sequence is doing. So it's interesting. what is the actual problem that people have that you're solving that, for example, Mint doesn't solve? Because Mint, again, like millions and millions, so that would be like the incumbent that you're trying to displace to a degree.
Well, no. There are a bunch of like PFMs, right? Personal finance management tools like Rocket Money, Wine, Neptil, Monarch, Mint is obviously the biggest and most famous one, which does like I mean they closed it. But we actually start where they finish. I am not into financial planning. I'm into execution. We see people take those tools, bring them to sequence, and execute, right? So I'm actually not competing with them because budgeting is, again, I don't know how to 10x anything there. We've built something that is different and sits in a different place. We are an execution tool. I like to think of sequence as like a fitness app that goes to the gym for you, right? You set it up, and we do the execution. We always put you in control. You know what's going on. You know where the money is going. You see how you build whatever it is that you want to build. Either repaying debt, start saving, start investing.
Yeah, so explain in super layman's terms like how the automations actually work, because I was listening to some of your past content, and you said that the average American has 15 different financial accounts, so like super fragmented. So what is the actual problem? Like, what is the workflow that, I mean, obviously different customers, different workflows, but when somebody, pick the average, pick the most common customer, what are they actually doing with this?
So maybe just the opportunity is a great question. I mean, what we came to understand through working with our audience is that our financial stack, both as consumers and small or micro business owners, went through a massive unbundling. Right, the average American holds money in 15 different places, and if you're a small business owner, it's even more than that, and it's very hard to follow where all that money is. It's even harder to manage, and it's almost impossible to make smart financial decisions in context. And it's getting worse. The gap between the consumers and small business owners and all the different places in which their money lives keeps going. Because of open banking, banking as a service, embedded finance, all of that, there are more and more services, more and more products, more and more apps, which are all great. And what we do, our strategy, is to lean into the fragmentation. We don't bundle and we don't unbundle. We just make sense of it all. We bring everything into one place. We help our users harness all those amazing offerings. I mean, you can really build wealth through that. But we also bring everything to one place and we put them in control. The combination of just a little bit of intent, some guidance, and a lot of automation can change the trajectory of your life. Seriously, we are seeing that.
I think this is very useful, because I even noticed, like, sometimes I'll find, and I don't know if this is like the perfect example, but I'll find like a PayPal account over here that has a couple $1,000s that I forgot even existed, or is other, I mean, like maybe I'm also Canadian too, so I have Canadian accounts, and I have American accounts, and I have investment accounts in Canada, and I have investment accounts in the US, and I have a Canadian crypto account and a US crypto account, and I have two Canadian banks, two American. It's like it's all over the place. It's actually chaotic. It's absolutely chaotic. So this is the solution for all of this.
Absolutely. It's not only the solution to not lose 2K on PayPal, but it's actually a way for you to make sure that every dollar that you have is put to the best use, right? And it helps you achieve your goals on autopilot. I mean, we are seeing people that are. I mean, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping people get out of debt. Something that many of our users do. That doesn't mean that you are, I don't know, that you don't have money at all. Some people that are high earners will still have student loans and a bunch of things like that. Or credit card or stuff like that. We help them to automate and optimize the debt repayment, which means that very quickly they're moving from repaying debt into saving to what's important for them, or investing, and making sure that they are, that they are taking care of their kids' future, of whatever is important for them, their older parents, or just living a life, the life that they want to live. And that is our company is very mission driven. It's something that we really like believe that we can, as I said before, we are changing the trajectory of people's lives.
ShipStation is a success story partner. Now, last month I was looking for a new office chair online and there's tons of options, but one review stuck out. Someone said they've been using it for 2 years working from home and their back pain was completely gone. And that's what convinced me to buy it. See, if you run an online business, you know customer reviews are everything, and nothing gets you better reviews than fast, accurate shipping. I started using ShipStation thinking it was just for printing labels, but it does so much more. Everything's in one place, super easy to manage. It automatically finds the cheapest shipping option across over 200 carriers and saves you up to 90% on shipping costs. The automation alone saves me hours every week. There's a reason why successful businesses use ShipStation. In fact, 98% of companies that stick with ShipStation for a year become customers for life. Wow your customers and get great reviews with cheaper, faster, and better shipping. Upgrade to ShipStation today to get a 60-day free trial. There's no credit card or contract required. You can cancel anytime. That's ShipStation.com, code SuccessStory. HubSpot is a success story partner. Now, the future of business is happening right now, and you don't want to miss it. That's why you have to be at Inbound 2025. They are bringing together the brightest minds in marketing, sales, business, entrepreneurship, AI for 3 incredible days in San Francisco, the global epicenter of innovation and technological disruption. Picture this. You are learning directly from Amy Poehler about creative leadership. You're getting AI insights from Dario Amodi, who's literally shaping the future of artificial intelligence. Here's what makes Inbound special. It's not just the great keynotes. You're going to dive into breakout sessions where you can immediately implement what you learn. And plus, San Francisco's legendary startup ecosystem provides the perfect backdrop for networking with all these great entrepreneurs, decision makers, industry leaders, peers who are actively shaping the future of business. From September 3rd to 5th at the Moscone Center, you're going to be surrounded by forward-thinking professionals who turn insights and ideas into breakthroughs. Don't just watch the future unfold, be part of creating it. Visit inbound.com/register to get your ticket today. Walk me through, tell me a story about a customer and what sequence or automation they've set up so people can start to realize like how this could actually impact somebody's life.
So I think a good example would be, I think that maybe the best example will start with describing our ICP, or our ideal customer. So our ideal customer is a small business owner, right? And I say small business owners and not a small business because those people they wear many hats, right? They manage both their business finances and their personal finances on sequence. We have a guy that has an amazing business of short-term rentals. And he has a family, 3 kids, and that's his business. That's his family business. His wife is working with him as well. They manage between 30 and 40 apartments. They register the apartments on all platforms, from Booking to Airbnb. Those apartments are not theirs, right? Most apartments belong to other people,
and they're the ones who are just filling them. Yeah.
There's a lot of money movement. It's coming from different platforms, for different apartments, for different owners. There's the cleaners, there's security deposits. They need to make sure that they are saving enough money, putting stuff into marketing, and paying themselves, and taking care of their kids' future, and saving towards a vacation. So it's not rocket science, right? But there's a lot of money moving, and you can't not pay an owner, right? So before sequence, they used Excel sheets, and I think that the guy told us that he was spending between 3 to 5 days a month just making sure that all the money is moving into the right place, the right owners, coming from the right platforms, putting aside for security deposits, paying back the security deposits. So it's a mess, right? And with sequence, we brought it down to like an hour. Which is amazing because it gives him more time to take on more apartments, grow his business. He's taking care of, all of his like the 529 for his kids. He started investing, and we're actually now working on a series of case studies that we're gonna share soon. But it's pretty amazing to hear the stories and what people are actually achieving.
Yeah, no, it gives your life back. And as an entrepreneur myself, finance is one of the most annoying parts of a business. It's just, I mean, I'm not like everybody's a numbers person to some extent, but most people don't enjoy it. I think there's a certain kind of crazy person who enjoys numbers and they all become accountants, but the rest of the world hates it. It's boring, it's tedious, it's not fun, right?
And there's a lot of people feel nervous about it, you know. It makes you nervous. Yeah, I just the other day spoke with a guy who has he has like a franchise business, and he has like a few smoothies stalls, like, you know, like, I don't know, like 6 or 7. And he said like you guys save me so much time, and give me so much peace of mind, because I know that I'm always paying my employees on time, that I have enough money in each sub account. And it's just for me, as one of the people who build this product, it just makes you happy, you know. You wake up in the morning and you're saying, I'm building something that has a positive impact on the world. And that's what I always wanted to build all my life.
Now, the very obvious question, I think that if somebody's listening to this, it's important that you answer this, because you're moving people's money around based on an algorithm. So what's the safeguard so that something doesn't go off or something doesn't get transferred? Because then if it's all automatic, if somebody is using this properly, that means that they're trusting sort of their financial management completely. And that's stressful. I mean, I'm sure you have these conversations all the time.
Yes. So first of all, the for many years people talked about the self-driving money, um, and I can tell you that people, like, with 100% confidence, people don't want self-driving money. They want help, they want some automation, but they really are not. Yeah, they are not ready to hand you everything and say, I'm not going to look at it. And there's a famous saying that the three most important things for people is their health, their family, and their money. But it's not necessarily in that order. And we are seeing that people, even when everything moves 100% without them having to do anything, they come back 2 or 3 times a week to see what's going on, right? So you can configure the system in a way that some things you'll have to do manually, so it won't go like automatically. You just need to press a button until you get more and more confident. Besides that, again, we have a custodial bank that is FDIC insured and regulated. We are regulated by proxy, right? So everything is like 100% legit. The way that it works is that we, as Sequence, we are not a bank, so we can't touch the money. The money is in Thread Bank, our partner, our custodial bank, that they are, heavily regulated, like any other bank. So money can't get lost. And then when people are building the rules, there are a lot of ways to make sure that stuff that nothing that you don't want will happen. So you can build the guardrails in the software. So you can say, I want to always pay the full outstanding credit card balance, but never pay more than $1,000 or 10,000 or whatever. Right, so you can always build those guardrails. We have, if somebody is interested in seeing how Sequence works, so obviously YouTube, but we have a crazy active community of amazing people on Discord. Any question, some people in the community knows the product better than I do, to be honest. Some of them are extremely smart and like just great people that we feel lucky to build with and for.
That's a smart play as a founder too, building a community. That's very smart. That's such an underrated asset that you've built. I think that more founders should try to do that. And I mean, like we always talk about audience, right? We talk about audience, build audience. No, build community.
I can go on and on and on about it. It's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. I have all my life tried to build communities around things. I was like had a few like minor successes. Here with Sequence, that was the very first thing that I immediately understood that can be can become like a moat, can become like a moat around the business. And my take is that community product fit is much harder than product market fit. And if you have a community and you see like early signs of community being created, you have to do whatever you can in order to cultivate it. And that's what we've done very successfully.
If we look at Sequence and already what it's enabling, but we look at the future of bookkeeping and finance, I'm assuming that you're already understanding how AI is going to impact this and how AI is going to. So, like realistically, how far are we away from bookkeepers not being relevant anymore? CFOs? I mean, CFOs to a certain degree. I mean, CFOs can play a bigger role if you're like going public or at that later stage. Maybe people want the experience, but say like a very tactical CFO or very tactical bookkeeper or an accountant. With Sequence plus, I'm assuming AI that you'll eventually roll out, what does the future of finance, bookkeeping, small business finance look like?
So bookkeeping, I think, is I mean the more like hand like like tedious work that you need to do, the easier it is to replace you, right? So bookkeepers should definitely be worried. I think that it's a matter of like it's we are not far from there. CPAs and accountants and CFOs can become strategic, right? So that's a different story. It depends what kind of an accountant or CFO you are, because those people can become very strategic, and that's far from replacing them. But they will be able to do way more with much smaller teams, right? Because all the like putting numbers in and making sure that you reconcile stuff, that's gonna be solved
So
very
you've already
soon.
you've actually already almost solved it even without AI to a degree.
Yes, yes. The problem there is with the long tail, right? So you need AI and you need good AI to understand what was that payment, where that money went, where how to categorize it. So we are not. It's very close, but it's not bulletproof yet. But again, if I don't know, 10 years ago you needed a team of 10 people, now one person can do it, right? Um, yeah. So that's that, and I think that our place in the world, or Sequence's place in the world, is to become the connective tissue of all those things. We don't want to replace no player, and we don't want to give loans. We don't want to give credit cards. We don't want to compete on interest rates. We are the connective tissue. We are connecting our users to the best offer for them, and we are using AI already now to analyze the customers to be able to give them the best offer specifically for them. I can tell you, hey Scott, I see that you have this Amex card. If you move to Discover, you will be able to pay less, or vice versa. And so really always on our mission to improve people's life through their financial well-being. And there's a lot to be done there, and there's also a lot of money that you can make.
Of course. Well, because okay, so I was going to say, like, so we have open banking, embedded finance, banking as a service. There's all this unbundling. You're doing the rebundling. You're being the connective network of all of these.
So but I'm not bundling, right?
Sorry,
Because
you're
there's
connecting.
there's
You're connecting. Different. Yes, correct.
there's the famous, like, you can either bundle or unbundle. We disagree. We think that there's now, or at least where we play, we are leaning into the fragmentation. We are leaning into the unbundling, but we make sense of it all. I don't want bundling means that I will give you the cards, I will give you the loans, I will give you the insurance. I don't want to give you anything. I want to make sure that you are getting the best offer out there. Because for me to compete against, I don't know, again, with, like, I don't know, Chase, Fargo, it just doesn't make sense.
You said that Starbucks is one of the biggest banks in America because of stored value cards. So, what does this really tell us about where the future of banking is heading?
I think that bank accounts as an infrastructure is already a commodity. And we are building on top of that. That's where all the fintechs come in. So I think that it will be, I mean, again, like, people have their money in Starbucks, right? It's a bank by definition. And that's just one example. I mean, there are like so many more. And Uber is giving loans, and, like, so we are starting to see more and more and more companies that their core offering isn't financial services, offering financial services. And it's something that we don't, not only that we can't stop, we don't want to stop, right? It's great. People have way more opportunities, more options. Competition is good, right? But there needs to be this connective tissue, and that's what we are building.
If you look 10 years out, what do you think the future holds for finance and banking, traditional banks, all these other sort of unbundled products, where you are in all of this?
I think that the big banks are not going anywhere. They have a brand, and brand is the like one of the strongest things that you can have. I think that they will need to find ways to give better service. I think that the small and medium banks should be more worried, and they will need to think of like strategies in order to stay relevant into the future. Yeah, and I think that the problem of this massive fragmentation is going to grow, and it's again it's an opportunity, but also has its challenges. Um, so that's why I think that there's a huge opportunity here. We are very well positioned to take advantage of it, but maybe there will be other players that will come in.
If people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about Sequence, where should they go?
So my most active on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn profile is fairly active, and getsequence.io.
Perfect.
That's our website. You can see everything there. I'm happy also to share our link to our Discord community, which is again very active. You want to ask questions about Sequence, talk to people that are using it. You are more than welcome. So we can share the link to that too.
So just a couple questions, because again, serial entrepreneur, you've failed publicly and then you succeeded. But what is your framework, or how do you think through extracting the maximum amount of learning from your failure? So really thinking about what went wrong without letting it paralyze you.
That's actually a great question. For me, the more pressure, the more fear, and the more anxiety makes me do stuff. I feel best when I have a plan and I know what I'm going to do. So for me, being paralyzed was never an option. And I think that just get out there and do stuff, try stuff, build stuff. Even if you think that even if you're really stressed and in a bad place with yourself, just get out and do stuff. Do stuff. That's the best thing that you can do.
A lot of startup culture, it celebrates a lot of optimism, which I don't hate, but you really advocate for brutal honesty and truth, and almost like removing a lot of the delusion about how successful you really are, because that's what led to all the stressful times you had with Lance. So how do you maintain even your team's morale in this world of brutal honesty and truth and not optimism?
Well, I don't think that you can. That it's one or the other, right? I mean, you need to get close to the truth as much as possible. Sometimes the truth is that you're doing good, and sometimes that things are going like down the drain, right? The important thing, the most important resource that we have obviously is our time. And if you are lying to yourself or faking stuff, then you're lying to yourself. You're wasting your most important resource. So try to think about it not like a sugar coating and all that. Just like you have a limited time here. Make sure that you're putting your efforts and your energy in a place that makes sense. Fake it till you make it is one of the things that I hate the most.
Why do you hate it so much? Why is that wrong?
Because it takes people into a journey in which they are 90% of the time faking it. There's a mental toll that they are paying. And when I say faking it, I don't mean like if a customer asks you, do you have that feature? And then you say yes, and you go and build it and ship it next week. That's not faking it, that's making it.
It's true.
But if somebody asks you how things are going, and you tell him, we are crushing it, it's amazing. When you're obviously not, or when you are just like you say, I have 5,000 customers, but you actually have five. And that's very dangerous, and that's where things can become like, so don't fake it, right?
And I think that also for an entrepreneur, I also don't like fake it till you make it. But for some reason that seems to be a prevalent idea in entrepreneurship, and I think that having that lack of alignment between where you are, what you publicly state you are, like how well you're doing publicly versus how well you're doing in your head, I think that just destroys people, especially if you do it for a long time.
I agree. That's why I don't like it. And also like I mean, if you're gonna tell bullshit at the end, people will know it, right? You can't hide everything all the time, right?
If you think about some of the best advice, because I'm sure you've had many mentors and just friends over the course of your career and many of your companies, what would be some of the best advice that you've ever received?
Take money, charge. If no one is paying, you're not building something valuable. I think this is key.
And then I would say that the last thing that I love to ask, because you have two daughters, and obviously you want to leave them with the best possible advice and set them up for success in the future. So if you could take all the life lessons and wisdom that you've experienced over your life and you could only pass on one lesson to them, what would that lesson be?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Even if you think that something happened and it's the end of the world, it's not. It's going to be way less worse than you can imagine. So don't be afraid. Go for it.